the song. All right. Got it. Okay. Melakasharir Ati hare borite nayanai Mavidir Goranga olite awe Melakasharir Ati hare borite nayanai Corona ve samsara vasana mora kapitu joy ve kabe nitai janera Corona ve samsara vasana Vishaya Shadiya Kabe Shulabe Mana Kabe Amani Raboshi Vrindavanama Vishaya Shadiya Kabe Shulabe Mana Kabe Amani Rabushi Vrindavanama Rupa Raghu Natha Pane Hoibe Akute Kabe Amabuja Bose Yugalabiriti Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akute Kabe Amabuja Bose Yugalabiriti Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahumura Aja Pratana Kore Sata Narotamudas Rupa Raghunatha Pade Raghumura Dana Kore Sadao Naruto Das Gurangavo Lite Ave Pulaka Sharir Adi Ade Lite Nayane Babenir Gurangavo Lite Ave Pulaka Sharir Adi Ade Lite Nayane Babenir Gurangavo Lite Ave Pulaka Sharir Adi Ade Lite Nayane Babenir Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Bharavidakacharya also Tera Satashi Shibad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantagoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagata Goswami Ki Jai Yamunamaya Ki Jai Shrimad Galasi Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Nivasesha Shanyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. When will that opportune moment come to me when I shiver upon chanting the name of Lord Gauranga? When will I cry while chanting Hare Krishna? When will I receive the causeless mercy of Lord Nityananda so that my desires for material enjoyment become insignificant? When will my mind be purified of material anxieties and desires so that I can understand Vrindavana? When shall I be very eager to study the books left by the six Goswamis so that I can understand the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna? The lotus feet of the six Goswamis are my only shelter. In constant separation from them, I remain Narottamadas. Narottamadas. Thakur Ki Jai. So now we will go on and continue reading the Jaiva Dharma by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Om Gana Timranda Shah Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual masters, Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. Jai. Not Jai being blind in the darkness of ignorance, but Jai Srila Prabhupada saved me. So let us share the screen and continue. So, eeny, meeny, miny, moe, where is that window? Where did that window go? Here it is. Here is the window. All right. Well, let's adjust this with this a little bit. Okay. better. One second. Okay, Vijaya asks a question. Vijay Kumar. He asks a question. Are all, wait a second, let me check the sound levels. Sound levels. Yeah, a little more. Vijay Kumar asks, are all the liberated jivas able to perceive Goloka? Are you going to find a vast minority are able to perceive Goloka? Goswami answers, among many millions of liberated souls, one rare soul is found who is a devotee of the Supreme Lord. Those who attain mukti, that's liberation, through Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga is, the meditation yoga, the eightfold system, yam, niyam, etc. And Brahma Dhyan, knowledge of Brahman, spirit, enter Brahmadam in the state of Atma Vismriti, forgetfulness of one's individual spiritual self. In other words, they, as spiritual sparks, float in the Brahma Jyoti. That's pretty easy. And they're in a state of suspended animation. So they don't realize Goloka. They realize Brahman. Devotees who are attached to the Lord's Aishvarya, opulence, and worship in awe and reverence, also cannot see Goloka. Wow, very rare. They serve Sri Narayan and Vaikuntha, the Vaikuntha planets, which are outside of Goloka, with pomp and grandeur. Among the pure devotees engaged in serving Krishna in the mood of Braja Ras, only those whose material bondage by Krishna's mercy is completely eradicated are able to see Goloka. Vijay said, Gurudev, if only such rare, elevated, and liberated devotees can see Goloka, why do the scriptures like Brahma Samhita, Hari Vamsha, Padma Purana, etc. carry descriptions of Goloka? If Krishna's mercy descends upon only those engaged in Braja Bhajan, why were such narrations about Goloka necessary? Interesting question. If it's so rare, just don't put it in all the books. Goswami says, those rare souls absorbed in relishing Braja Ras, or lifted out the taste of Vrindavan, or lifted out of the material world by Krishna and placed in Goloka, can see the entire Goloka. Some Shuddha Bhaktas in Braja Bhava can see certain parts of Goloka. Of the two types of pure devotees, Siddha and Sadhaka, the Sadhakas have not yet gained the eligibility to see Goloka. Sadhaka's us. Siddha Bhaktas are of two types. Vastu Siddha, that means perfect in the realization of the ultimate objective, Krishna. And Sarup Siddha, those who have achieved the perfection of being reinstated in their spiritual identity. Let me unpack that. So perfect devotees have two varieties. Those of Vastu, by nature, their nature, the Vastu. Okay, their nature is perfect. They've never left the spiritual realm. They're always Krishna conscious, always have been, always will be. And the other type is the Sarup Siddha. That means they're perfect, their form is perfect, but they have achieved the perfection by either the sadhana process or by the kripa process. Kripa means mercy process. Those are the only two ways you can achieve it. The Vastu Siddha devotees, that means the eternally pure devotees, are the glorious and fortunate ones who have been installed directly in the spiritual abode of Goloka by Shri Krishna's mercy. The Svarup Siddha devotees, that means who come later, are able to perceive Goloka directly, but have not yet received Krishna's mercy to the extent of being lifted out of the material nature and becoming installed in Goloka. However, Krishna's mercy is gradually opening up and enhancing their spiritual devotional visions. Hence, they are eligible for a wide range of spiritual perfections. Different graded Swarup Siddha devotees have their spiritual eyes open to varying degrees. Like the eyes can be shut completely, and then just like a little bit of slit open. You can see a few things. Can't even read if I do that. You can open it a little bit and then open them up all the way. And their vision of Goloka is proportionate to the amount of Krishna's mercy they have received. Therefore, one can ask the question, this is my humble self speaking, therefore one can ask the question is, why isn't Krishna equal? No, you receive Krishna's mercy insofar as how much you love Krishna. If your love is mixed, then you get a little less mercy. I mean, you get complete mercy, but the Krishna's mercy is given to you in such a way to bring you to a higher platform. So it's a different type of mercy. I was listening to a class today. Prabhupada was actually talking about how everyone is the child of God. Excuse me. Everyone is the child of God. And so then people question, then why is everyone treated differently? I mean, why there's some poor people, suffering people. And Prabhupada said, Krishna gives you what you need, not necessarily what you want. Because what you want may not be good for you, just like a child wants things that are not good for him or her. As long as bhakti is on the platform of sadhana bhakti, means practice bhakti, everything the sadhana devotee sees in Goloka is slightly tinged with mundane understanding. Wow. Until we're pure. After being promoted to the stage of Bhava Bhakti, so there's the sadhana bhakti, which is the Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti in the sadhana bhakti. And the next stage is Bhava, means emotional bhakti. The devotee is blessed with direct glimpses of Goloka. On the level of Prema Bhakti, the devotee sees Goloka to a much greater extent. So one gets a glimpse, but the glimpse is actually tinged. Just like if you open your eyes a little bit, you tell your eyes, your vision is tinged with the eyelashes. You see eyelashes. Because for those of you who are ladies, you have really long eyelashes. And so, you got to really make an endeavor to see them, even the material world. So Vijay said, Gurudev, in what aspects are there differences between Goloka and Braja Gokula? In other words, Goloka in the spiritual world and Braja Gokula, that the Vrindavan in the, I don't want to say it's in the material world, but it manifests within the material world. It's never in the material world. Whatever you see in Braja, that's in this world, is there also in Goloka. That's the spiritual realm. The differences of perception arise solely because of the varying consciousness of the different viewers. Really important, which is graded according to their levels of Shraddha and Bhakti. In other words, Shraddha means faith and Bhakti means love. So, let's say if you're little faith or no faith, you go to Goloka, you go to Braj, and what do you see? Pigs, monkeys, stool, dirt, people asking you for donations. And you think, is this supposed to be spiritual? So that's, as I described before, that's a thin covering of Yogamaya. Very thin veneer. So it's a veneer. Veneer means thin. I described that in a previous class, what a veneer is. So you really won't see. But then if you have a little more faith, well, maybe Krishna is here. Then you see a little more. And if you have a lot of faith, Krishna is here. I have full faith in His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is there. He's there. And you see a lot. And if you love Krishna completely, then you see everything. In reality, so in other words, just to unpack this, when you go to Vrindavan, Mathura Mandala in this world, your vision or experience will depend on your faith. And if you don't have faith, you're not going to see anything. And if you do have faith, you will see according to how much faith you have and how much love you have. Because love and faith are very much connected. Because if one has full faith, one will know that one should love Krishna. And that's the only way love manifests. In reality, there's no distinction between Goloka and Vraja Vrindavan. It is merely the perception of the viewer that creates differences. Actually, a really important point. It's only your own perception, what you see, that's different. Because you have spiritual cataracts. And because of these spiritual cataracts, you're not able to see. I mean, just like many years ago, not many years ago, a few years ago, I had a cataract operation. Cataracts are when the lens of your eye gets, well, a little clouded. And so I thought, no, everything's I can see fine. Why do I need a cataract operation? But the doctor said, you better get it. So I went in. And then immediately, the whole world looked super colorful. I would look at the deities and they would just, the colors would actually just like, wow, they'd overwhelm me. I had to wear sunglasses inside, basically. So, that's equivalent to what? Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vlochanena. Having your eyes tinged with the salve of love. And also, it's also true in this material world to a certain extent. Like if you, okay, here's an example, a gross material example. Let's say someone has a dog that they love. And they look at the dog and they just see something different than I see in the dog. I'm thinking the dog is ugly. Just like someone, I got criticized for this the other day. Someone is, I was in Sacramento. So someone is walking the dog, pug dog, which looks like someone just like pushed in his face. It looks like he ran into a brick wall and had an accident and everything's pushed in. And I was thinking, ugly. But if I were to say to the person, what a nice dog, the person would go, yes, you realized how nice my dog is. Of course, Krishna's beauty and attractiveness is not determined by our love. He's always beautiful. But because of our covering, that's a little bit different than... But anyway, I think you get the example. It's not... The comparison does not actually have all corresponding points. There is a difference. Krishna is objectively beautiful. The dog... This is what I got in trouble with. I said the dog is ugly. And they said, how can you say that? Yeah, actually, there's a person who asked me that the other day. I said, how can you say that someone or something is ugly? Isn't that duality? And I said, look, buddy, I'm in the material world. If you want me to function, I have to see some duality. I can't see up and down of the same thing, so I have to make some distinctions between something that tastes good and something that doesn't taste good. And sure, my taste may be a relative thing. I may be attracted to something that you're disgusted with and vice versa. That's relative, but still we're in the dualistic world, so we have to recognize that. And when you're there, you have to function to a certain degree, even if you're engaged in devotional service. Like Prabhupada had certain foods he liked, certain foods he didn't like. So it's not, Prabhupada's not on the level of duality, but you have to function on that level in order just to be practical in this world. All right, persons steeped in tamagun, the mode of ignorance, see everything in Braj as material objects, which is what I just said before. Whereas a person conducted primarily by Rajagun sees Rajagun's passionate mode of nature, persons see with a slightly more elevated and auspicious material consciousness. Finally, persons advancing in Sattvagun can increasingly view Shuddha Sattva, because the whole background of Braj is Shuddha Sattva, the pure mode of goodness. Thus, everyone views the Dham according to their own level of eligibility, and consequently, what they see is different. I mean, even not just the Dham itself. Dham means holy place, like the trees and the rivers and everything like that in the holy Dham. But the people, sometimes you'll go there and you'll see the people and you'll think, very primitive, but whatever you're going to think, because you're covered by the tamagun, the mode of ignorance. But one who is actually transcendently situated sees the Brajavasis as eternal associates of Krishna. And they treat Krishna like that. I mean, even if you had pure vision, which you may not have, which you probably don't have, if you look at Jagannath Puri, the residents of Jagannath Puri, then you'll see the residents having 4 arms, Vaikuntha forms. Vijay said, Gurudev, the subject is getting clearer and clearer in my understanding, but kindly give examples to properly clarify the point. I'm aware that material examples cannot fully explain spiritual concepts, but even if they convey just a limited idea or a single similar aspect, then the whole spiritual concept becomes easier to comprehend. This is a really important point. So when you use metaphors or analogies or any other type of comparisons, that comparison is necessarily imperfect insofar as revealing 100% the object of which it's being compared to. But the best comparison has the most common points, but I would say practically never have 100% common, similarity or identity with that which it's utilized to help you understand. Goswami said, so we don't use comparisons, metaphors, analogies to prove a point. That's not a proof. It may be a method of knowing, but it's not proof. It's a method of understanding when you've applied other proofs, such as the Vedic injunctions. But pratyaksha, direct perception, is not a proof, nor is comparison or analogies a proof. It just helps you understand. Like, the analogy or the metaphor Prabhupada used is comparing, this is from the Vedas, is comparing the Krishna and his energies to be the sun god, the sun globe, and ultimately the rays of the sun, saying they're 3 and 1. And he compared that to Krishna and his personality, the planet where he lives, and then ultimately his expansions, the rays of Krishna, Ramajyoti, or the Jiva souls which expand from Krishna. In one sense, they're one, the Chincha Beta Beta Tattva philosophy, but in another sense, they're different. So anyway, it's a comparison to help us understand, but it's not proving any point at all. So don't use analogies or metaphors, comparisons, to prove points. You make them to help people understand a point that you've utilized some other methodology like the descending process to prove. Descending process means the knowledge comes from above, and then it proves whatever you're trying to prove. Goswami said, this is indeed a complex problem, for it is prohibited to reveal one's own realizations of these esoteric truths. Whatever realizations and perceptions one gathers by Krishna's mercy must be kept a guarded secret. So, we find nowadays, the Prabhupada's left the planet, someone has some really intimate realization. I'm a gopi. And they just talk about it. They join a gopi group on the internet. Facebook gopi group. And, aspiring gopis, anyway. Or they have a web page, aspiringgopis.com. Pay password access. Followers of Chandravali.com. However, I will disclose to you whatever the previous spiritual preceptors have acquiesced to reveal. Acquiesce means they've agreed to reveal after being asked. And whatever remains to be known by you by Krishna's mercy, you will soon perceive. Because basically this information, or this knowledge, or this realization has to be perceived. That's why Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Pratyaksha Bhagavan Dharmyam, that famous verse, Rajavija Rajaguyam, Pavitramidam Uttamam, Pratyaksha Bhagavan Dharmyam, Shushukam Kartamavyam. That this knowledge is the king of all education, is the secret of all secrets, because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. Direct perception. Not with these material senses, but with spiritual senses. And the verse before is Idam tu te guyatamam Idam tu te guyatamam Anasuyave Ganavigyam Sahitam Gadgatwa Mokshase Shubat. I'm revealing this knowledge to you because you are not envious of me. Pratiksham Anasuyave. So you are not envious. And then you get Jnana Vijnanam, and get Moksha. In this way, you'll get liberated. 9th chapter, Gita, you can read it for yourself. In Goloka, all perception is based upon pure spiritual consciousness. Thus, mundane perception is absolutely absent. For nourishing rasa, taste, Krishna's chit shakti, spiritual energy, conjures up a wide range of bhava emotions. One of the elements created by bhava emotion is known as abhiman. Now this is an interesting word, abhiman, which means spiritual self-conception out of transcendental love. Also, it's a generic word that means self-conception. What's your abhiman? I'm this body, Prabhu. I'm black, I'm white, whatever. These are all one's abhiman, but these are false egos, and there's a real ego too. So, one of the elements created by bhava is the conception of one has of themselves as a spirit soul in a particular relationship with Krishna, or at least as a servant of Krishna. That's your abhiman. So, for example, if someone asks me, okay, your holiness, your maybe want to be holiness, Dear Krishna Goswami, what is your abhiman? I will honestly say, my abhiman is a servant of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. That's a spiritual self-conception. And they'll say, but what is your abhiman in Goloka Vrindavan? And I would say, that is none of your beeswax. The reason I said beeswax is because that's the way we used to say none of your business. Krishna in Goloka is unborn and without a source, yet to establish the Leela pastimes, eternal associates such as Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi have personified the vatsalya ras, the parental relationship, the parental taste, through their abhiman, personal conception, self-conception, personal conception of fatherhood and motherhood, respectively, in Goloka. So let me explain what that means, practically speaking. Because in Goloka Vrindavan, nobody gives birth to Krishna, not Yashoda Mai, nor Nanda Maharaj. So normally, to have that abhiman, the self-conception of motherhood or fatherhood, you have to be involved in the procreation. Just like my mother. She would always tell me, in order to get me to do something, she would say, I carried you for 9 months, and look at what you're doing to me. Some of you may have heard this from your respective mothers, but that's why she had that abhiman. If she had just picked me up at Walmart in the clone department, it would be that same abhiman. She would have the abhiman of the purchaser. I purchased this kid. In the future, I guess that's what you're going to be able to do. You're going to be able to go to Walmart and buy a designer kid. I mean, maybe you'll give some of your genes and your husband's genes, and you mix them together and use CRISPR or something like that, whatever there is in the future, and then you'll get that your abhiman will be, that's my designed clone. I'm not going to get into how the soul got there. That's another question. So this is the conception. So Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi had this conception of being father and mother, whereas in reality, in the spiritual world, they don't give birth to Krishna. Because Krishna is always a youth, a new youth in the spiritual world. There's no growing up. But they remember him growing up even though he didn't grow up in the spiritual world. In the material realm, there's the growing up, the appears growing up, even though it's the same body, but Krishna manifests his body as a little baby, then as a toddler, then younger, and then a youth, like that. Similarly, in Madhurya or Shringara Rasa, that means the conjugal relationship, the dichotomy is like the difference, the duality of Vipralamba Bhav, that means separation emotion, and Sambhoga Bhav means meeting, when people the devotees are meeting with Krishna, are present as manifestations of abhiman. So, yeah. So the manifestations of one's self-conception. Because in other words, one thinks that I've been, like in separation, the abhiman is, I'm Krishna's lover and he's neglected me, like we were reading about in the Brahmara Gita in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. Actually, in Parikya Bhav, that means the emotion of conjugal love, the Parikya, or unmarried conjugal love, the Parikya Abhiman, that means a self-conception. Here it's explained. As a female paramour, that means lover. And the Upapati Abhiman, that's Krishna's conception, as a self-conception, a male paramour, are eternally in full play to embellish the Leela, the pastime, although simultaneously the underlying relationship is of Shuddha Swakiya, pure conjugal union. So in other words, there's a self-conception, there's a conception of themselves as illicit lovers. How do you like that? there's that conception that I'm an illicit lover. It's interesting. Although, really, they do belong to each other. Shuddha Swakiya. Swakiya means like married relationship. So, in essence, ontologically, it's not illicit. But for the Leela, it appears to be illicit. And that's because of the Abhiman, the self-conception, that each and every one of them is an illicit lover. It's really interesting stuff, this description. In Braja Gokula, that means in this world, however, the same Abhimans become apparently manifest in a gross and mundane outward form because of the mundane notions of the viewers. So, in other words, Radharani in this world actually has a husband who is manifest, and so the Abhimans become manifest for our benefit. Because if we didn't see the Abhimans, we would think we wouldn't understand what's happening. It's actually interesting. For example, in Braj, and it's in this world, Mother Yashoda actually gives birth to a child in a maternity room. Yes. In this world, she actually gives birth to Krishna. Now you may say, but didn't Devaki give birth to Krishna? No. Devaki gave birth to an expansion of Krishna known as Vasudeva Krishna. And that Vasudeva Krishna was brought to Braj by Vasudeva. By Vasudeva is a different pronunciation. And that Vasudeva Krishna entered into the Nandanandana Krishna, that is the Krishna Yashoda Nandana Krishna, who was born from Mother Yashoda. Yashoda gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The Nitya Siddha, the eternally liberated gopis, are married in ceremonies to gopas such as Abhimanyu, which is interesting, the Abhiman and Abhimanyu, and Govardhan Gopa. Abhimanyu is the so-called husband of Srimati Radharani, and Govardhan Gopa is the so-called husband of Chandravali. And on this very real basis have the Parikiya Abhiman, the self-conception of being lawless lovers, but the self-conception of being lawless lovers is fully illustrated in this world, where it's not fully illustrated in the spiritual world. But the conception is the same. But when the pastimes take place, the same pastimes take place in this world, the conceptions, I don't want to use the word conception, the concepts, the personal concepts of their identity, all the aspects to reinforce those personal aspects are prominent. And one of the reasons for that is for us, so we can understand. Otherwise, the pastimes wouldn't make sense. If Radharani was thinking she's married and there's no one there, it wouldn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. And another reason is that a lot of the living entities who are taking part in those earthly pastimes, or in some other planet, in some other universe, with Krishna, who are taking part because they've just become Krishna conscious and are getting introduced into the pastimes, they need to perceive the manifestations of those Abhimans. Does that make sense? Because they're coming for the first time. Thus, the various Abhimanas of Goloka is such an interesting topic. I'm in ecstasy. The various Abhimanas, self-conceptions of the devotees in Goloka, are present in Brajagokula in a very tangible form. That's the same thing I've just been saying. They're tangible. There's the birth of Krishna in Braja Gokula, and in Goloka, there's the conception that I gave birth to Krishna, but actually there's no birth of Krishna there. In truth, all this is orchestrated by Krishna's Yogamaya Shakti, his potency, and has extremely subtle links with the original primeval truth. It is decided by Krishna, who has his Yogamaya, his spiritual potency, Shakti, arrange these things. Not the least part of these leelas is false, and all aspects are a facsimile of Goloka. In other words, any leela, facsimile means like a copy, like a Xerox. Instead of facsimile, we could say it's a Xerox copy. A multi-dimensional Xerox copy. So, because in Goloka, there's simply the Abhiman, the personal conception. And in Braja Gokul, there's the external manifestations, or tangible, as stated above, manifestations of the Abhiman that reinforce the Abhiman. But anything you see in Gokul, Braja Gokul, that means in this world, is a Xerox copy. That's an easier word. People don't use the word Xerox. It's a computer scanned. It's actually better. Differences in perception occur on account of the various degrees of obstructing mundane consciousness in the viewers. So if you're seeing a difference, that's your problem, buddy, not the problem of Braja Gokul. For example, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, you have Gopakumar, who doesn't see a difference. He goes between Braja Gokul, Goloka, back and forth, because he's, preaching in Braja Gokul, because in Braja Gokul, you have conditioned souls there who are just coming to Krishna consciousness. So that's where the preachers go, to Braja Gokul. Okay? You don't have to preach to anyone in Goloka. It's an interesting question. But Vijay says, must we first purify the quality of our bhajan in Asta Kaliya Lila Smarnam, meditation upon the eternal pastimes of Goloka, by the 8 daily time divisions, and then try to grasp these topics of Braja? So it's an interesting question. So what's Asta Kaliya Lila? What is Smarna? Smarna means to remember. Bhajan means the practice of bhakti, So Vijay is asking, do we have to become perfect in this remembrance of Krishna's eightfold pastime? Eightfold pastimes means different in the different times of the day. Kaliya means time. 8 timed pastimes, remembrance. Do we have to, because a pure devotee or someone aspiring to be a pure devotee, someone on a very elevated platform, not you, Prabhu, will think at different times of the day, now Krishna's doing this, now Krishna's doing this, now Krishna's doing, but all that thinking that Krishna's doing this, and this, whatever time of the day, is based on Shastric injunction and the instructions given by the spiritual master. So the question is, do we have to become completely conversant in this type of smarna, remembrance, throughout our day, and then try to understand all these topics that we've been discussing? That's he's asking is Guru Maharaj that. Now we're going to hear the answer tomorrow. Okay, so let me there's one question I can answer right now while we unmute you all. So, there's a question, Hare Krishna, how is Abhiman different from Sthai Bhava? Sthai Bhava is your emotion. Let's say, I'm a servant of Krishna. Then the Abhiman would be the I'm a servant of Krishna. Your emotion would be the emotion of serving. what emotion is there in serving Krishna? It's very much connected, but it's the emotion. So it's connected. It's a little subtle difference, but it is connected. The Stai Bhava is the emotion of serving. Anyway, note. Let's say one's a conjugal love. It's easier to explain from that perspective, even though I shouldn't be using that example. If one's in conjugal love, so there's certain emotions that are different than one's conception of oneself. The conception of oneself is, I'm Krishna's lover, but there's emotions that you experience that are connected with that, which is, attraction to Krishna's lips, for example. That's not your abhiman. That's an emotion that's part of your Stai Bhav. Hope that explains everything. Okay. You were allowed, that's a nice question though. So, who would like to ask a question about these intimate subject matters?
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Haribol.
Please accept my humble obeisances.
Send my blessings. So, what's your question?
So many questions, Gurudev. But may I ask 3 questions?
Depends how long they take to answer.
Gurudev, the first question I had was around duality that you were talking about. So I was thinking some things in the material world might look ghastly, like, the food chain, a lion eating a gazelle or something like that. That even though is ghastly, and, we understand that it is the food chain, and, Krishna has made the 2 entities like that, and,
Yeah.
That's how it is. So how do we still appreciate, how do we still appreciate that this is Krishna's, the lion and the gazelle, they are both Krishna's children, souls. So how do we, walk on that gray line between duality and accepting that it is spiritual and material?
So in other words, how do we make some discrimination within this world without being in Maya? Is that the answer? Question?
Yes, Gurudev.
How do we have? That's an interesting question. We have to. I would say that we have to be, in order to function in this world, we have to accept duality. In order just to be, if we don't accept some aspects of duality, then we're not going to be able to preach Krishna consciousness or serve Krishna within this world. If you think that stool and pizza are exactly the same, then but it's duality. Someone who was actually on the spiritual platform doesn't see a difference. He's just absorbed. But so we have to understand what is the minimum of this duality that we have to accept in order to survive in this world. And in order to survive, we have to satisfy certain emotional and physical needs. So because we have an emotional body and a physical body, and so therefore, in order to satisfy the needs of those bodies, we have to accept a certain amount of duality. If I think that everything looks the same, everything, there's no ugliness, everything is beautiful in this world. Actually, there's a whole song like that. Everything is beautiful in its own way. Anyway, so then I'm not going to be able to function and serve Krishna, and actually, I'll become crazy. So voluntarily, I must accept duality in order to function. Just like You have the duality of a red light and a green light when you're driving a car. You know, obviously they're both lights. And if you're Krishna conscious, you know what's the difference between a red light and a green light. But if like, you don't accept that, you're going to get smashed when you drive your car. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, Gurudev.
So you have one other
May I
question?
ask?
Yeah.
Yes, Gurudev. I was also wondering about the realization being a guarded secret. Maybe I got confused. Maybe it's not applicable for everything, but quite often when we are talking to non-Krishna, non devotees,
Yeah.
we have to we quote something. Like for example, a lot of them say, "Why is Krishna
Yeah.
the supreme?" And everything. So not every realization will be a guarded secret, or every realization should be a guarded secret.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the main thing you don't reveal is your own personal realizations that affect you. I mean, if you realize that Krishna is the supreme personality of God, that's fine to talk about. But if you realize that you're a gopi, don't talk about it. That's the difference. Anything that is just directly related with you and Krishna, then that you don't talk about with anyone else. Okay?
Thank you, Gurudev. Hare Krishna.
Adibo. Okay. So there's a question here. I have one disciple named Advaita Chandra from Jagannath Puri. So a devotee asked me in a private message. So Advaita Chandra from Puri and his family all have four arms? No. But the statement is that demigods see the residents of Jagannath Puri as having four arms. I'm just repeating Shastri statements. The resident, but they also have some of them may also have a Braj form too. Imagine, next time I see him, which may be tomorrow, I'll say, "You have four arms." Of course, many devotees have four eyes. I've seen that quite often, glasses and eyes. So one other quick question, something serious. So does anyone have any questions? If not, we can just end because it.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Haribol.
Hare please accept my
what's
humble
up?
obeisance.
So what's the
Oh, good. Sorry.
what's the question?
The question, I once asked you this, but I'm still not clear. We have the Yoga Maya that is prevalent in the spiritual world and
Right.
organizes, the Leelas in the spiritual world. And the
Right.
Mahamaya operates in the material world.
Right.
But the devotees who are, or as practicing devotees like us, what are we under? Because your answer to me was, I hope you are not in Maya. That's what you told me. So if we are not
I
in
would say
Maya,
sometimes we're in Yoga Maya and sometimes we're in Mahamaya.
so we're in both. Oh, okay.
At different times, depending on if
Oh,
we're absorbed in serving Krishna, that's Yoga Maya. But if we're in Maya, you were just sleeping and having some nonsense dream, that's Mahamaya.
oh,
All right?
okay. All right. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Different times of the day.
Okay.
That's what we say to devotees. You're in Maya sometimes. And other
Yeah.
times we say you're Krishna conscious. Okay, so that's it.
All
It's
right.
time